of Education got DOGE'd. We knew it was happening. We knew it was coming because the Department of Education really needs to be looked at. So my friends who are in support of education, we all are. Trump has never said that he's taking away education. What he does want to do is, again, look at all this overspending. The fact that some of these bureaucrats in the Department of Education are making way more than the actual teachers who are on the front lines, who are there supposed to be able to help our children. Meanwhile, they can't even afford rent and their classroom is overloaded with students. And so they are short-staffed and can't even help. This is a problem. When we're ranked number 37 or 40 out of 40 countries, for those of you who went through public school, that's last. That's not good. This is what we're looking at. And Trump has said many times over, he's not cutting the good programs that are helping our students. He wants to keep the people that are working and doing well by our students.
We want to cut people that aren't doing the job. We want to keep the right people.
Absolutely.
And I said, I don't want to just say we're going to cut 50%. I want to cut the people that aren't doing the job.
Wanted to make sure that we kept all of the right people, the good people, to make sure that the outward-facing programs, the grants, the appropriations that come from Congress, all of that are being met. And none of that's going to fall through the cracks.
President Trump has said this. Linda McMahan has said this. But the Democrats are unhinged and they can't hear that.
Basically says, I'm getting rid of education.
He's not eliminating education. Oh my goodness, this unhinged Weingarten, whiny Weinerson here.
What does that say about the future? So many people are so mad about it because they're just taking opportunity away from kids that don't have it. So billionaires, kids of billionaires, they have it.
Let's stay on the facts.
Sorry.
No.
Let's stay on the facts, you crazy unhinged lady. It's a lie. It's just a flat out lie. Trump has never said that. Of course, you would be deranged if that's what you were in support of, is eliminating education. But again, if you've gone through public school, for some people, they're going to lack common sense and critical thinking skills. I'm sorry, because that's what the schooling tries to hammer out of you. They're not trying to build leaders and innovators, unfortunately. And that's exactly why I pulled my daughter from a public school system, because she was falling behind, because the schools are overloaded, because of numerous indoctrination points. That's a whole other video. So I pull her. Now she's excelling and on honor roll in homeschool. There is a disconnect here. Why are we spending the most and receiving the least out of all the countries that have been tested? It doesn't make sense.
Think about a country whose president basically says, I'm getting rid of education.
Your reaction?
Well, clearly we're not taking away education. The president never said that. He's taken the bureaucracy out of education so that more money flows to the states. Better education is closest to the kids, with parents, with local superintendents, with local school boards. I think we'll see our scores go up with our students when we can educate them with parental input as well.
This is why Trump is wanting to cut the Department of Education. So yes, he's cut about half the people and they're getting severance pay. So my advice to the people who are sad that they're losing their job, it's not in alignment for you. How do I know it's not in alignment for you? Because you just lost your job. Now, if it is in alignment, it'll come back. See, this to do with mindset. And that's the problem with the unhinged Democrats. They don't have a positive mindset at all. And these are not people that should be teaching our kids in any capacity. If they can't understand, if you're not bringing value, if you're not making things better, then maybe you'd be better suited someplace else. Shouldn't everybody want that? And if you can make it better, then maybe you'll get hired back. Like Donald Trump says, he wants the people in there that are doing a great job. You're going to hear in a minute somebody who defends his job. And he's like, I am the best for the job. But this guy, he needs some serious help. God bless him.
If you're a parent like me, you probably go straight to checking the nation's report card. That's the data that shows the student to teacher ratio, math and reading scores, and where the school ranks academically overall. And you know who puts that data together? Analysts like Joe Murphy with the Department of Education. But he just got fired. Another casualty of Elon Musk's infamous chainsaw cutting its way through agencies like Joe Murphy.
Well, if he's the one putting together the statistics, then what is wrong with this picture? First of all, he should see and go, okay, this isn't working. But instead, he's going to take this wimpy stance and basically beg for mediocrity. This is not what we want anymore. Watch.
Former management and data analyst for the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education joins me now. Really, that's the first place as a parent I go is I look for your data. Mm-hmm. So before we get into everything that you have done for the department, and
yes, we look at the data, and that is why those of us that understand what President Trump is doing approve that he's cutting out senseless spending like this, because the scores are down. The data shows the scores are down. Hello, I'm sorry.
And just what's at stake here. How are you processing all this, and what concerns you the most right now?
Well, beyond my personal situation, which is, it was a very strange thing to have a career one day and not have a career the next, without knowing that there was a transition coming.
Right.
Okay, first of all, another piece of advice for this guy: all of life is a transition. See, this is the problem when somebody works in government their whole life. I don't know if this guy has, but somebody who's trained to not build anything. Even if you're an employee, you'll be the best employee if you are focused on building. If you're just there waiting for the handout, then you end up like this guy. I didn't know it was a transition. All of life is a transition. Nothing is guaranteed. Don't take things for granted. Again, mindset, have a positive attitude, show up, and don't take anything for granted. Be appreciative of your job. Say, these numbers are terrible. I look at these statistics every day, and be proactive. What can we do to make it better? But instead, he just sat there and looked at these statistics and saw how terrible they are. And every day just was like, well, they're terrible. Kids can't read. Good job. I mean, it's absolutely absurd.
Specifically, I'm very concerned about keeping the money flowing to the states, because that's what keeps the services going for our students, our public school students, K through 12 across the United States. And that's really all the department ever does.
No, see, the money wasn't really flowing to the students, though, buddy. And that's the whole problem. The money was flowing to you, and you just thought it was going to keep flowing in because you didn't even realize that life is all a transition, and that one day you could have money and the next day you couldn't, because you don't focus on building anything. Any entrepreneur who focuses on building realizes and doesn't take for granted things, but instead this dude is taking for granted the education of our youth. I mean, he is not stating a case, in my opinion. What do you think? This makes me all more for Trump letting go of people like this.
Is just get the money to those folks. In exchange, they have to get us some data, and we use it to make decisions on where to best allocate resources. I don't know how that's going to take place with what's happened.
So let's explain to folks exactly what that means. So the federal government gives
he feels
a sum of money.
Feels so sorry for himself. How about feel sorry for the kids that don't know how to read? I had a friend who in the public school thought it was fine that her daughter didn't know how to read because she thought she had white privilege. How is it a privilege not to know how to read? This is the indoctrination at its finest. This guy feels sorry for himself because he's been let go and has a severance pay and all the things, could take the early retirement, and he feels sorry for himself instead of feeling sorry for the children who are being left behind and our national report card being so terrible. That's what he should feel sorry for. But instead he just is totally self-absorbed and totally feels sorry for himself. You're fired. What do you guys think? Do you like this guy? Do you think that we should continue supporting? I mean, I can have empathy for him, but not really, because he has so much self-absorption and empathy for himself. As an acting teacher, when I'm directing something, you can never feel so sorry for yourself. You always have to fight for something. Otherwise, people don't care. And in this case, if this was a scene, I don't care about him because he's not fighting for something. He's not fighting for the education of our children. What I see is somebody who is feeling sorry for himself. Now, I'm not saying that hard things don't happen in life. They do. But again, it comes down to mindset. I want to be in support of the person who's like, you know what, but we can get up and start again. We can do this. We want to make it better. And if he was really a stand-up person, it's like, hey, Mr. President Trump, look at everything here. Look at the value that I'm adding. Kids are my priority. And you could probably state a case for yourself, but instead he's like, wah, wah. It's just so sad that I'm not going to be getting all this money to keep our kids uneducated and ignorant. Doesn't make sense.
Money to a certain state, let's say for literacy programs or special ed or something of that sort, right? Then you, as a data guy, track to see if that money is going where it's supposed to be and making sure that money or those programs are thriving because of those federal funds, right?
At its core, that's what we're all have a different role to play within that process. But yeah, that's the entire situation. And the data come in, we analyze it and run some rules against it, share it with the programs that are established in statute, and make sure they have the data that they need to make decisions. You can't argue with the idea that getting accurate data to decision makers efficiently is a bad idea. That's not political. That whatever you do.
No,
with
that
the
doesn't
data.
sound like government waste to me. It sounds like you're somebody who's figuring out if that money's being wasted or not. Am I right?
Yeah, trying to. Yeah.
Well, that's another problem, buddy. Here, I'm going to coach this guy. She's trying to coach him like, you have an important job. Well, I'm going to coach you too. There's no try. Just do it. Say these numbers aren't working. Are you just there to say, so look at our report card, it's terrible, and that's it? And you just want to get paid for that every day? Or is there an end goal in mind to raise the scores? The reason that, thank you, you did your job. We found out our report card is terrible. Now we need to move on and have more proactive people, not this weak mindset of like, so that's just the way it is. And that's the vibe that I get from this guy. Well, that's just the way it is. And President Trump isn't about that. We're about proactive people, about making change, positive change for our children with some energy here. Hello?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And did it work? Were you finding, for the most part, that the money was going where it should go and it was working?
I think there are also fail-safes in place to make sure that people are doing that. There is monitoring that goes on and make sure people are spending the money where they should and where they need to and where they're legally obligated to. So that all goes on throughout the department in various different offices, and we all work together in conjunction, and there's a lot of coming together. There certainly has been synthesis over the last few years where we all know what the other parts, cogs in the wheel are doing, and we work together to make sure that we're advancing and getting the money to the kids where who need it.
Okay, so now that we don't have you and other data analysts,
right?
Where's the oversight? What's going to happen?
Couldn't tell you, to be honest. Very concerned that, I know there have been assurances that nothing's going to miss a beat or anything's going to be a problem, but I can't believe that because
I can't stand it. You're not providing any value, Joe Murphy. I'm sorry. I mean, you're a valuable person as a human being and as a soul, and I'm sorry you're so sad, but we need somebody with a little more energy and life and proactive mindset and possibility and what can be done, a can-do attitude. And this is just not it. I'm sorry. It's just not it.
And then they had 63 who were dismissed. So that's what you're left with, right? So if you go back to, this number here from inauguration day to where you are now, this 2,100 number, it's possible they could be absorbed into other departments in the U.S. government, which would, in effect, fulfill Trump's promise of trying to shut down the Department of Education. However, you're going to need congressional approval to get to that point. But as of today, that's where we are, the numbers on the board.
Giving notices to half of the department is not keeping that department functioning. It's going to have enormous consequences to families. People use the Department of Education to fight for the rights for their children. It would be deeply disappointing to them if they didn't have anywhere to turn.
The problem is we haven't had anywhere to turn. as a mom that had a student in public school, somebody like me didn't have any place to turn. The school isn't advocating for us. It's almost becoming the enemy. And again, this is what we have to look at. The Department of Education wasn't advocating for parents. It was trying to drive a wedge between parents and children. And what President Trump wants to do, and his cabinet and people who voted for him want to do, is to look at that so that we can support the parents again. Again, when I went into homeschool, everything was, you know, in the parents' favor, in the parents' honor. In the public school, it was like, you must be doing something wrong. There must be something wrong. You're going to get in trouble. It's this mindset that the parent, the customer, the student is always wrong. And we're bringing integrity and discipline and love for learning back into the parents, into the teachers, and into the students, and putting the power back with them instead of in the federal bureaucracy. That is what is changing here.
The average bureaucrat at the Federal Department of Education makes over twice as much money as teachers in Indiana do. And when you talk about the $100 billion budget for the entire department, think about the schools that you could build, the teachers you can hire. That's what President Trump is doing. He's sending these dollars back to the states so that they can spend them in a much wiser and more effective way than the federal government can. This has been a long time coming. You're right. Congress has to cement it. We should eliminate and abolish the department and make these cuts permanent and let states keep that money instead of sending it to Washington.
So we wanted to show the results of 4th grade reading trends and 8th grade reading trends. This ain't good. Look at that yellow line right there. That is below basic, and you see how it's on the rise since 2019. A lot of that could be a COVID impact, but the trend hasn't stopped. Now, here's the 8th grade reading trend. Look at the yellow line again. It's really the same trajectory there, up to 33% that are below basic reading on the national trend. Let's go back to 1982. Remember this guy? Watch.
The budget plan I submit to you on February 8th will realize major savings by dismantling the Departments of Energy and Education and by eliminating ineffective subsidies for business.
That now today. Will Congress allow this to happen?
Well, Bill, let me tell you where reading scores are going up in states like Indiana, where we have one of the best school choice programs in the whole country. We empower parents. We let teachers teach. We get the government out of the way of these schools. And that's why abolishing the Federal Department of Education is so good for our public schools, because it empowers them to do their jobs better without the federal government getting in the way. Over the years, we've seen Republican presidents and Democrat presidents pass bills like Common Core and Race to the Top, No Child Left Behind, that have bloated the federal role in education. Now it's time to unwind it. That's what President Trump is doing in Congress. I'm going to do everything myself to help President Trump get it done and cement it and empower schools at home to do their jobs.
At least No Child Left Behind was focused on the students. None of these protesters are focused on the students. And one of the things that is going to be pushback against the Trump administration and people in Congress that support abolishing the Department of Education is something Democrats are saying today, which is the Department of Education is tasked with protecting disabled students across America. And Jamie Raskin, for example, is all out there saying, how are you going to defend this? So let me ask you.
Well, I think it's simple. That will be done at the state level. A federal bureaucrat who's in Washington, D.C. can't protect schools and kids in Indiana. That has to be done at the local level. And that's why getting the federal government out of the way and letting schools take care of these issues with those tax dollars that will be spent, more tax dollars spent at the local level will help that happen in a much better way than anything that happens in Washington.
Jim
DC.
Banks, the Hoosier. Thanks for coming on today. We'll see where it goes, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move education into the states so that the states, instead of bureaucrats working in Washington, so that the states can run education. Linda McMahan is a real professional, very sophisticated business person. And she cut a large number, but she kept the best people. And we'll see how it all works out.
Assessment of Educational Progress found in 2024 that among 4th graders, only 39% of them were proficient in math, Eighth graders, 28% of them were proficient in math. In reading, fourth graders, 31% were proficient. Eighth grade, it declined to 30% proficiency in English. We spend more per student, as the president has pointed out, than all but 4 countries. Yet we rank 31st in outcomes. I mean, we should be top 5 at least, if not number 1.
And we can be. Notice the progression is downward. The longer you stay in school in America, the dumber you get.
The worse it gets, yeah.
And that shouldn't be that. Think of what happens in college, God knows. But that absolutely shouldn't be happening.
That's exactly right. That should not be happening. That's what is happening. We've been dumbing down our students. Why do you think that is? Please let me know. Do you think big government is the solution when it comes to our kids and pulling these test scores up? Or do you think DOGE looking at the Department of Education, cutting a lot of the people who were maybe not helping the situation because it's not improving, and those who have value could lobby for their position. The rest could take a vacation and figure out something that's maybe in better alignment for them. Or is this dumbing down of Americans just such a propaganda machine that they can't help themselves? Our own Denver mayor is dumbing down Coloradans by trying to teach us that crime is good, even though crime is running rampant, crime is down, and to protect criminals and keep them away from ICE. If you want to know more about that story and how our Denver mayor is releasing criminals out of our prisons and jails and releasing them to the streets rather than releasing them to ICE, watch this video because it's coming up right now. Please do like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps all of us.